Rauner, Pritzker, Davis, Londrigan. The races are getting hot. We'll talk about it next on Capitol View. Welcome to Capitol View, the program where we talk about state issues, sometimes federal issues, and how they just might affect your life. This is an interesting time with the election coming. Everybody knows it's coming if you watch a little television or look at your phone and see ads popping up everywhere. Anyway, to talk about the coming events of November 6th with me, Kent Redfield is back. He is retired professor of political science, University of Illinois, Springfield. Kent, welcome.
Good to be here.
And Jaclyn Driscoll is here. She is a reporter for NPR Illinois here in Springfield. Welcome, Jaclyn.
Thank you.
So there was a new poll this week. It was similar to some other polls that we've seen. This appears to be all very independent. It's something called Ipsos. They do a lot of commercial polling and marketing information. They joined with Reuters and the University of Virginia Center for Politics and did a poll of, it was like 2,000 people in Illinois. It was nearly 1,000 were likely voters. And of those, they found 50% for Democrat J.B. Pritzker, 30% for Republican Governor Bruce Rauner, who's seeking a second term, 6% for Sam McCann, who's running under the Conservative Party, 3% for Cass Jackson, the Libertarian candidate. Kent, you follow numbers. This is similar to what has happened before, but obviously Governor Rauner wants to turn it around. How much importance does something like this have?
Well, it tells everybody that the race is about where it's been, even though we've gotten a lot of noise over the last couple of weeks about different things that sometimes move polling numbers, but it is starting to look like the numbers are getting pretty well baked in terms of people having made up their mind, and it's difficult to move those kind of numbers, particularly given the fact that the governor's unfavorables just are very, very high for an incumbent governor. So it's not good news, and the governor is looking for a strategy, and it's almost a strategy of the day in terms of trying to find some way to get leverage.
Well, one thing he's clearly doing is each of the main candidates for governor has kind of a big issue, and Jaclyn, they both were highlighting those when they appeared last week in one of their debates, which was just in front of the editorial board of the Chicago Sun-Times. A lot of people like us were able to watch via the wonders of the internet. But the governor keeps attacking, and there was a lot of interrupting going both ways between just those two top candidates. And the governor keeps talking about J.B. Pritzker ripping the toilets out of the mansion next door to his main mansion in Chicago. Pritzker says it was under renovation, but there was a report from the Cook County Inspector General saying that it was an attempt to defraud, to take the toilets out to make it look like it was uninhabitable so they could get the $330,000 in tax breaks. They've paid back the money now, but the governor says this Pritzker could be another governor going to jail. How's that plan?
Right, he called him Jailbird, right?
JB.
JB will stand for Jailbird, and I think at the debate, they talked about how many Illinois governors have gone to prison, and Governor Rauner said this would be another one right here, right? So he's really attempting to make this a very big issue. He's trying to steer voters away, make sure that they don't trust Pritzker. He's another Chicago Democrat, not fighting for downstate people, and trying to steer away from his tax.
Yeah, the graduated income tax, which Pritzker says would only make rich people like us pay more, but the middle class and those striving to pay less. But he won't say where the cutoff would be. And the governor says everybody will get taxed more, as they do in all other states, which is not exactly the case when something like PolitiFact Illinois looked into it, and there are, I don't know, 7 or 8 states where people considered middle class actually pay less under such a plan. But Kent, the governor has been hitting on Pritzker for the toilet issue, the property tax issue since the Sun-Times came out with this, I think about a year ago. The recent report from that Inspector General put a point on it, but perhaps this issue doesn't seem new enough to move numbers at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, I think people saw the story. We made light of it in terms of hauling around toilets and clever play on words and stuff, and now we're trying to recast it as being a serious criminal offense, which is probably quite a stretch in terms of what might actually happen in terms of any kind of liability that there might be. People get tax breaks and redo their taxes and redo their property taxes all the time. So the governor has the problem of he doesn't have a lot of record to run on. He has baggage in terms of the continuing controversy over how they handled the Quincy nursing home.
Right.
And so, the only way he wins is to make Pritzker unacceptable, unelectable, as it might be. And so, that's where he's going to hit. We're going to hear that for the next month. That doesn't matter how badly things have gone when I'm governor. This is an unacceptable person. This person doesn't have the quality to be governor, and therefore you have to keep me. It's not a strong position to be in.
It is interesting. Most of the ads we've seen from the Rauner side, and he's spending actually less money than Pritzker, who is worth more than him, which is unbelievable when you consider that Rauner was probably the richest guy that ever ran for governor a couple years ago. But Rauner is mostly attacking in his ads, although he does have one where he's sitting there saying, we need another chance to continue the fine changes I've made, etc. I should say, from the Pritzker perspective, he said that Inspector General's report in Cook County didn't include some things about how much in disrepair that mansion was, the one that got the reassessment, and how bad it was beyond toilets. So, people can judge as they will. But Jaclyn, as the professor mentioned, the situation with the Quincy Veterans Home, and as we tape this show, the candidates for governor are supposed to have a debate in Quincy, so that may have occurred, and I'll bet there's going to be a lot more meanness. But as the governor attacks Pritzker for property taxes and the break that he got, with, properly or not, Pritzker calls it fatal mismanagement that 14 people at that Quincy Veterans Home died of Legionnaire's disease. I think a total of something like 70 people were sickened. And reporting mostly from affiliate of yours, WBEZ radio out of Chicago, has shown that there was like a 6-day waiting period before the public was informed that they knew there was a Legionella development. The governor says we did everything we were supposed to, but there was a very an email that questions things, something out of the governor's office, where one of the people working there said, why don't we wait and tell the public until we see if reporters ask any questions? And there's a new ad out also about this. So how bad is this for the governor, and where is this going?
It's very interesting to follow. Pritzker does have that new ad with the father of, or the son rather, of
a guy named Tim Miller, son of Eugene Miller, who died of Legionnaires. And it's a 60-second ad, which shows they've got money to spend, and it's a story to tell.
I don't think that's a secret. They definitely have money to spend. But I think that's very powerful. I also think that the Attorney General, Lisa Madigan, launching an investigation into the wrongdoing is pretty timely. I think that this is something that the Pritzker campaign can use. But again, Rauner can say, we handled everything appropriately. There's no reports from the CDC or any particular group saying that we did mishandle this case. So again, it just kind of feels like word slinging, and who's worse, toilets or the Veterans Home?
Well, actually, at the debate in front of the Sun-Times, the governor accused Pritzker of politicizing, a tragedy. Kent, you've been around. I don't know what's fair, but I guess it's also true that when Governor Rauner ran against Pat Quinn, I believe there was some blame he cast at Pat Quinn for children who died under the watchful eye, or not watchful enough, of the Department of Children and Family Services. So, goose and gander, I don't know.
Well, and again, if you are the incumbent, then you own whatever happened. I mean, it's on your watch. And so even if there wasn't gross mismanagement, it's never good optics or narrative to talk about veterans dying in state nursing homes. And then you add on top of that what appears to be some at least looking at the PR dimensions of the crisis as well as dealing with it directly, that just adds to the narrative. And so, campaigns are about substance and what are you going to do, but they're also about very strong narratives. And the Pritzker campaign has a narrative that this is 4 years of failure and 4 years of lying, and this just plays into that narrative of here's another case where the governor didn't manage things well, and rather than own up to it, they tried to hide it, and that plays directly into Pritzker's narrative.
Yeah, well, and the governor. Go ahead.
I was just going to add too, and the Pritzker campaign's really playing up the email that was sent about trying to pin it on Tammy Duckworth, right? That's another storyline that they're using there, so it doesn't look good.
And that came from when Darlene Sanger was a deputy governor for a while. She's now the Republican candidate for comptroller. She put forward an email saying, should we look back to the former director of the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs some years ago when they had, I guess they had sicknesses that were like this. They didn't know it was Legionella back then, and so that did generate Democrats having a press conference in Chicago saying, how can you say this about Tammy Duckworth? She's in the U.S. Senate, she's a war hero, and don't blame it on them when this happened, when Legionella was discovered absolutely under your watch. So difficult stuff. One of the kind of interesting dimensions, I think, of the debate in front of the Sun-Times editorial board when Tom McNamee, the editor of the paper, had to say at one point, boys, let's quit bickering here and talking over each other. Let's try to get some answers to questions. But one of those situations was the governor was very strong on illegal immigration, and even said illegal immigration, it takes jobs from Americans, it lowers wages of Americans, it makes higher crime in Chicago. A lot of Democrats jumped on Rauner, who 4 years ago talked about immigrants make our state better and what the American dream is all about. And then he did clarify, the governor did the next day, after getting criticism, saying, well, I wasn't saying the illegal immigrants are causing the crime or violent themselves, but because they take jobs away from people, then that creates more economic despair and that creates more crime. Kent, it seems like perhaps he's just playing to the base that voted almost overwhelmingly for Jeannie Ives in the primary when the governor only beat her by 3 points because she attacked him for his immigration policy and thought he wasn't conservative enough.
Yeah, and I think trying to shore up your base when you're down 20 points and you've got an issue that may play well downstate, but is a very bad issue to run on in Chicago in terms of how you're dealing with immigration reform, and to going one step further into crime, then you're sending a mixed message that may help one place and hurt another. And again, now clearly you have Pritzker kind of playing the rope-a-dope kind of. He's not being very specific about anything.
Yeah, well, he did say on this, he said immigrants, they're not illegal people, they're undocumented. He made that point, which certainly plays well. Yes. He also said that they are good for the economy because many have, even if they're not here documented, they have family members who are, and the governor is standing with President Trump and I'm standing against President Trump, which plays, again, better in Chicago than it does downstate.
Yeah, but given the political demographics of Illinois, you'd probably rather be in Pritzker's position in terms of dealing with this issue.
Yeah. Guns is another issue that I don't think came up strongly in that. Well, there was something about licensing or at least putting more state regulation on gun shops, and Pritzker said he was for it, and Rauner, who vetoed bills to do that, said he was against it because it would hurt business and not really solve anything. Pritzker said it would, so you have a very different thing. And I know when the governor has talked to a station in far southern Illinois, he has called Pritzker a gun grabber, which is certainly what NRA type people who really believe in gun rights and think the politicians are out to take their guns. Rauner says that to a station in southern Illinois, but I didn't hear him use that at the debate. So it's always, there's a little regional politics going on.
Definitely. You definitely play to your base where you're at.
You do indeed. Speaking of base, well, there'll be an interesting event in Springfield that, again, might have happened as people watch this, but it was announced that Vice President Pence is coming to Springfield to campaign for at a fundraiser at a country club for Rodney Davis, who is in a race for his, I think, 4th term in Congress, 2012, yes, 4th term in Congress, 2-year term. He's running against Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan of Springfield. And Mike Pence, it's going to be a $500, or was to be a $500 event per person. And, you know, there's a lot of money being spent in both of those races. Jaclyn, how close is this one looking?
Okay, so several polls have been released, and each from both sides show that their respective candidate is doing better in those polls, right? So we don't really know. But obviously there is a national significance to this race. Looking at the amount of money being poured into this race, looking at the people who are coming, Mike Pence, we've had Dr. Rowe come to speak with Rodney Davis about Veterans Affairs. We've had Ivanka Trump. We've had President Trump didn't come to his district, but they were
right next to his district in Granite City. And Rodney Davis was there. He was with the president. Right. He was happy about the steelworkers' jobs that were, you know, they reopened a furnace or two in Granite City and hired back hundreds of workers. So
and on the other side of that, Congressman John Lewis, who is a key civil rights person, is coming for Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan. So obviously these important people coming here for the 13th congressional district race shows that this is a very important one.
Right, and go ahead.
Yeah, and it's obviously the polls are showing it's very competitive. You don't send the vice president into a district that's a slam dunk, particularly in a year when the Republicans are quite concerned about losing control of the House of Representatives. And you probably are getting some triage here where you know, you've got some Republicans in suburban districts in other states, or even in Illinois with Peter Roskam up in the Chicago suburbs, where you know, they're getting to the point where they're going to start pulling money away from contests that they can't win, and say, you know, what are the core districts where we've got a really good shot of holding on to this incumbent? And so Davis becomes more important in that context, that this may be one of the key districts that they think this can be our firewall, and obviously the Democrats are putting a lot of money in. If they're competitive in this district with a long-time incumbent, then that's an indication they're you know, they've got a pretty good tailwind going into this election.
Right.
So.
Just to add that, the last campaign for Rodney Davis, right, the Democratic challenger, the Democratic Party pulled their money from her, so we've seen that in the past.
It was she 4 years ago, and she it was a judge from Southern Illinois or near the St. Louis area, Ann Callis, and she, no offense, but didn't turn in to be the best candidate. I think Betsy has turned into a much better candidate than Judge Callis was. That there was a great white hope. Then a couple years ago, there was a man from Decatur, Mr. Wickland, who didn't have a lot of firepower as a candidate either. No offense, Mr. Wickland. So Rodney had a pretty easy time. This year, as in the first year when the district was new and Rodney Davis was against David Gill, a doctor from Bloomington, they came within 1 percentage point of each other. That was a giant race. And there was a third candidate in that race from the St. Louis area, John Hartman, I think his name is, who was an independent, who took like 7% of the vote. And Gill insists that he could have won that race without the independent in the race. So this year it is real close. We have some outside groups. Speaking of money, Kent, one of your favorite topics, but Emily's List has a PAC, and they've thrown, I think it's already more than $1 million through the primary that Betsy easily won over 3 other candidates, or 4 really, and in the general election. The DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee that tries to elect Democrats to the House all over the country, has thrown money into the race and is running ads against Rodney. On the Republican side, we know that U.S. House Speaker Ryan's super PAC put $1 million into the Rodney Davis ad. They're the ones saying Betsy Londrigan costs too much and her wants universal health care that would cost $32 trillion. The Londrigan people say that's wildly crazy. She's not even for a plan, they say. They demanded television stations take it down, but no television station did, because any little sliver of truth and TV stations want the money and aren't going to take down ads in political season. And then it's the Emily's List people, and they work nationwide to elect pro-choice candidates. They're running an ad making Rodney Davis and happy pictures of his family. They're kind of doing a parody of those drug ads where, look, these are happy people, but the side effects are, and they say the side effects are, you know, you could lose your health insurance, which Rodney claims he's for pre-existing condition coverage, and Betsy says, no, you're not. And Democrats say the Republican plan that Rodney celebrated on the White House lawn is not. So you've got this back and forth. And Rodney Davis is, by the way, demanding that ad be taken down because it has his children in it. Yeah. So it's a mess.
Yes, and
to say the least.
It certainly is, and you know, we're hitting, you know, as in this district, Londrigan is hitting the healthcare issue very hard. That's something that's being done nationally. That polls well. People have anxiety about healthcare, and
And you know what's funny about this? Early on, I thought Rodney was going to do all these ads about the tax plan that the House passed, but I know nationally, the overhaul in taxes, which Democrats say gave too much to corporations and rich people, but everybody's getting more in their paychecks. Rodney talks about it a lot, but his ads have really centered more on healthcare as the defense, I think, including his wife, the cancer survivor, saying it's ludicrous to say Rodney wouldn't want to protect people with pre-existing conditions because I have one.
Yeah, and so that, you know, that issue is obviously has traction because they have responded to it, and on the other direction, the tax issue just hasn't, you know, isn't something that really seems to be driving people in terms of this election, and therefore, you know, the campaigns are always, you know, point counterpoint response sorts of things, and so you can pretty much see what the internal polling looks like by the issues that they're focusing on.
And there's also the tariffs. But anyway, Jaclyn, you were going to say?
I think that Londrigan's story, too, of her son with tick bite and Lyme disease, and read the last rites twice.
Mountain spotted fever.
Okay. Yes. So that, I mean, that is something that she could definitely use. And obviously, as Kent mentioned, that healthcare polls well anyway. I think that
you're right. Yeah, she let her son Jack, who's like 20-ish, almost died when he was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe, I think he was 12 when he caught this disease and was in intensive care and had last rites read. Of course, Rodney Davis, for a number of years, has, and his wife Shannon, has been very willing to be part of this family narrative as well, that you know, she is a cancer survivor and was able to get the care she needed because she had options that they claimed Obamacare did not give them. So that's why, you know, Davis was very, as the Republican House, opposed to Obamacare. To get into something, I don't know if it's more fun, trivial, or interesting, but also within the 13th Congressional District, and all of us have now seen a new ad was posted on Capitol Facts as before we saw this, but I'm sure it's going to be hitting TV. People would probably have seen it by now, about Abe's hat. So Betsy Dirksen Londrigan worked as an independent fundraiser for people including Senator Durbin, but also from, I think, 2009 to 2017, she worked on a contract raising money for the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Foundation. That is the foundation that has got into some financial trouble because they spent more than $20 million for Lincoln artifacts from something called the Taper Collection. Included was more than $6 million for a hat purported to be Abraham Lincoln's, but the origins of that hat have been questioned, and so there's some question if it was Abe's hat, although it's got fingerprints that look like his. But because Betsy Londrigan was with that organization, and for 1 year in 2013, along with the CEO of that organization, she registered as a lobbyist so that the CEO could go and ask some legislators for money to help with the collection. There was a new advertisement that the Rodney Davis campaign has put up saying, look at this, wasted $6 million on the hat. And what does Betsy Londrigan do as a lobbyist? She goes and asks Mike Madigan. Now, we don't think there was any direct, or we don't have any evidence there was a direct talk with Mike Madigan, but we know that Carla Narofsky, who is, if I'm saying that right, who is the head of the organization, told me, and I did a column on it, Betsy didn't really do the talking at these meetings. We didn't have to register as lobbyists. She, helped set it up. She was there. I did most of the talking, and we just wanted to check with some legislators, including President Cullerton of the Senate and Senator Manar, if there would be some state funding. There wasn't in 2013. because it's a nonprofit, they did not have to register as lobbyists, but they did just to be careful. So now, of course, in a campaign, they're called lobbyists, and a Madigan crony. And now Betsy no longer works for that organization. She's a full-time candidate. And the woman in charge of the foundation has registered again because they are seeking state funding again. Fair, not fair, or is that just the way campaigns go, Jaclyn?
It's a big stretch. I guess that's the way campaigns go. If you can leave up ads that, you know, Betsy's for massive amounts of spending and she says that's not true. You know more about the issue. You've done the column. It's you know, only in Illinois are we talking about Lincoln's hat and linking it to cronyism.
And we're linking, I mean, you know, it is trying to tie Lonergan to Madigan.
Like the governor is tying every Democrat to Madigan, and every House and Senate campaign is trying to tie every Democrat to Madigan.
We spent a lot of money demonizing Mike Madigan, and so if we can connect Lonergan to Madigan, it also makes her look like you know, somebody who's involved with government, and government doesn't work. You know, of course, you know, Congressman Davis is worked for government almost all of his life.
He was an aide to Congressman Shimkus for 16 years, but he took a little time off there to be the executive director of the Republican Party of Illinois.
Right, right.
For a time in there too.
And so if you kind of don't like Mike Madigan, and it plays into the narratives, but it also is trying to generate enthusiasm and attention. You know, with all of the money being spent, all of the ads, trying to break through, get people's attention. I mean, Pence being here is about getting people's attention.
And we will see how that attention goes, because we also know there's going to be some, or at least there's a planned demonstration to happen there, and I don't know how close you can get with the Secret Service. Speaking of secrets, we're going to have to keep them now. I think we're out of time. Kent Redfield, Jaclyn Driscoll, thanks for the conversation. The election is coming. It's less than a month away. Thank you for watching. I'm Bernie Schoenburg, and we'll see you next time on Capitol View.